Now, on this programme, we've given a lot of time to the issue of young people and mental health and eating disorders. And tonight, we're joined by a young man with a lot to say about all of that. James McVey is well known as a singer and guitarist with the Vamps, and now perhaps even better known for his recent appearance on I'm a Celebrity. He's also open about his experience with anxiety and an eating disorder, and he is in the studio with me now. Thanks, James,
for
coming in. As I say, we've done quite a lot on teenage mental health and the crisis that just seems to be consuming young people in this country. When did you begin struggling with your anxiety or depression, or what do you, was it anxiety or depression?
It's difficult because a lot of press articles said I had anorexia, which I think isn't true. But what I would say is I've struggled for, I'd say, 10 years with having a negative relationship with food. And at the start, I didn't really realise just how severe it was, and it began to fester. And I was at a point where every moment of the day was, my thoughts were consumed by what am I eating, when am I eating, because I got it into my head thinking that not eating was a good thing for my health, because I wanted to be really lean, muscly guy. And I thought the only way to do that was eat loads and loads and loads of protein powder, but then nothing else. And it built up to a point where I realised that my life was being controlled by thinking of food. Yeah.
And I mean, what was the cause, do you think? Was it just that you wanted to look good, or was there a deeper cause? Did you ever get to the bottom of that?
Well, it's difficult for me because when I was growing up, like younger, sort of age 10, I was slightly overweight. And then when I turned maybe 15, 16, I rocketed up and got thin. And it was at the time of, there was a few shops that were fashionable for guys of my age to wear. And all of the models on the plastic bags it was in LA, and they, had six packs and big chests. And I thought that was desirable because all of the kids in my school thought that was cool. And it started where I just had this sort of shopping bag in my bedroom that I'd had from when I bought a shirt, and I saw it every day, and I thought, I want to look like that. So it started actually as me thinking, oh, I want to be healthy, I want to be active. And it sort of slowly transitioned into an obsessive kind of nature where every dying breath I had was, right, I have to have a protein bar. Oh, I can't have that slice of bread. I can't have ketchup on my food. And before I knew it, yeah, my life was dominated by this kind of anxiety with food.
And anxiety with food is a condition, and anorexia is a condition we normally associate with girls. My daughter had anorexia. We made a documentary about it. So I know a little bit about it, but what I do know about it is not many boys speak out about it, and young men speak out about it. So why are you willing to do that?
Well, yeah, in the past 6 years, according to a Guardian article, men being admitted to hospital for eating disorders went up 70%. So it's clear that this is a massive problem for us guys too. And a lot of us men find it quite difficult to talk about that because you're very vulnerable in that position. And I think showing that vulnerability, some men presume to be embarrassing. So I'm trying my best to shed some light on my personal experience with this in the hope that other people do the same. And a lot of us guys go to the gym and we scroll through Instagram and see bodybuilders and think that's great. And it's that recognition of understanding that it's not obtainable to look like that all the time. And that's the trap I fell into. I thought, well, if I do this, then I'll end up looking like this. And it's that acknowledgement that actually that's not a healthy outlook to have on life. And I think a lot of people like me are feeling that.
And do you still have a problem with food, would you say?
It's ongoing, and it's been probably 10 years I've been dealing with this, and every day is a constant battle for me. I've still got a long way to go. We did a photo shoot yesterday for the band's new album, and there was like a thing of chocolates there, and all the boys would just pick them and have them as the day went. But I wouldn't let myself do that, because I know that if I had a handful of them, I'd be beating myself up for the rest of the afternoon. And it sounds so strange saying it, but I don't have moderation in my life. So it shows that there clearly is still a problem for me that I'm trying to address and solve, I suppose.
Now, one of the issues I had when my daughter became ill with anorexia was that I didn't appreciate that it was a mental illness. I thought that it was a teenage fad that she was going through, that she just wanted to look better and get slimmer, and she'd grow out of it. But of course she didn't. She got increasingly ill. When did you accept, do you think, that it was a mental illness?
I think for me,
have you accepted?
Well, that's the thing. I'm quite resilient to thinking that that's it, because I look at it still thinking, God, I'm being so stupid with this. And I think that's the problem. We're still, I mean, we're slowly learning that the importance of acknowledging mental instability on par with, physical injury. But I think there's still a way to go. And I think I am still in denial with it. I'm not seeing it as something as serious as I should. But the reality is it does dictate how I live my life, when I'm eating meals, what I'm eating. And yeah, but I still think there is a way to go for me. Definitely, yeah.
And you've talked also about your anxiety. I won't say depression because you didn't. I don't think you used the word depression.
No.
But, many young people now have anxiety. How did that manifest itself? And how did you, talk to your fellow band members, for instance, when it came to your eating disorder and your anxiety? But how did it begin, really?
I think for me, there was a pressure to maintain control over my life. I was very, very lucky, and I'm lucky that my job took me around the world, enabled me to meet loads of people, do loads of things. But before I knew it, I'd been, swept away on this journey of a tour that effectively lasted 5 years, and I was never home for long. I was between hotels, which sounds glamorous and it's amazing, but there was that pressure to maintain that constant high. And I recognised that there weren't that many elements of my life that I could control, but diet was one of those things. And that became like my sanctuary. I thought it was my release to, know that I can take my protein pouches on tour with me, and every morning I can have protein with my porridge and water, and that was what I did. But I realised that that wasn't a long-term answer to my problems, and I would numb down the real issues I had, and my inability to be at one with my emotions, trying to remain emotionless, built up in me. And it got to a point where I was like, actually, I don't enjoy doing the band anymore. I couldn't see clearly. My vision was clouded with all things going on. And I think I needed to address things that were going on within my head. And it took me to breaking point before realizing I have to be vocal about it, and that was what was really cathartic for me to be able to.
When you said breaking point, you mean what? You mean you
leaving the band? Yeah. So we had just done an arena, our second arena tour. We just played 2 sold-out nights at the O2, and on stage I was like, I want to leave, which is ridiculous, but it just shows how these mental instabilities for me weren't rational. And yeah, it was an incredible thing to do in the band, and I absolutely love being in the band. But these things that were going on inside my head were kind of making me not enjoy that. And it was really bizarre for me. It was like a moral battle in my head, because I knew that I was being irrational and silly, but I couldn't figure it out in my head.
Yeah, and you have a big social media following. What role do you think social media plays, not necessarily in your, anxiety and eating disorder, but in these quite serious cases of depression among young people and teenagers? Do you think social media plays a big part in that?
I think social media definitely has a big role in it. I think it's impossible for us to say, right, let's all put our phones away now, because the reality is everyone has a mobile now, and whether we like that or not, that is where the future is heading. I think that there's a lot of potentially dangerous content on there. So my personal experience, I can see clear footsteps to where I got from seeing the people on Instagram, the bodybuilders, portraying this perfect, idealistic life where everything's great, and there was no kind of negativity there. It was all positive, and it made me think, well, why is my life not that incredible? Why? It was putting me down. I was like, well, why can I not, get to that level? And I think if our kids are scrolling and seeing superstars doing X, Y, and Z, they're believing that everyone's journey is headed into that, utopian life. And I think that's where we have slight issues. I don't know whether there needs to be something put in place that where people are saying, actually, this isn't genuine. This is not the norm.
Yeah, and there's a darker side where there are these images of self-harm and promoting suicide and taking her own life. We had the case of Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who did take her own life. Do you think something needs to be done about that kind of material online? Do you think that people like Facebook should be legally, that there should be a legal protection?
I think there needs to be some form of censorship, because the reality is kids have phones now, and it's very difficult for parents to kind of watch what their children are doing. You can access anything at the end of your hand if you've got a phone. So that there has to be something put in place, I think, to kind of address these issues. You know, kids shouldn't be able to see this content as easily as they are now.
Because it is pretty easy. Do you think there should be tougher laws?
I think there has to be, but it's about figuring out how to do that, because the internet's not something that's easy to control. So I'm not sure the actual solution, but maybe there should be more conversation about that reality versus not being real, because I think it's a scary place if our kids are being brought up thinking that everything they see on Instagram is real.
Because we know suicide rates, you know, from 15 to 19-year-olds, certainly suicide rates are at record levels. What kind of advice would you give, maybe to a young man who is bottling up anxiety and depression, doesn't want to talk about it in the way that you decided you would talk about it? What sort of advice would you give that young man?
It's really, really difficult, but I think communicating is the key. Acknowledging that emotions aren't something we should subdue but embrace, and I think opening up to anyone, whether it's a friend, relative, or whatever, that is the first step. Well, it was definitely for me, for sure.
Yeah, and do you think that enough is being done by the government, James, when it comes to control, to looking after people with mental illnesses? So not preventing people getting them, but once they've got them, do you think there are enough resources being put into young people's mental health particularly?
I think we're getting there. I think up till very recently, it was definitely not on the top of agendas for government. But I think that a lot of celebrities coming forward has highlighted the deep-rooted issues within society. And I definitely think we're taking active steps. But as ever, more things can be done for sure.
Right. And just finally, I mean, if you could say one thing to the government when it comes to mental health and a commitment to treating mental health, what would you say to the people who do have the resources to do something about this?
I think we have to continue to acknowledge mental health on par with physical health, because they are connected, definitely. So I'd say that's definitely what we need to endeavour to do.